Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Colton's Reviews, where I like to review Bibles, books, and other theology-related things. And today, I'm doing a special review, a recap of my favorite books that I've read in 2023. Now, I know we're well into January, halfway through the month, but I still wanted to do this. Ideally, it would have been great to drop this right at the beginning or at January at the end of December, but here we are. So, I want to take a look back at some of my favorite books and give a quick little review of them. And as always, there's going to be links down below for these if you're interested in any of these books. I want to preface this by saying there's 5 books in this list, but they're not in any particular order. It's not like a top 5. It's really just 5 categories I sort of made for myself here. So I'm going to base it off of those categories and just tell you why I enjoyed this particular book so much.
I fix my eyes on Christ. I fix my eyes on...
All right, so coming in, the first category and book is favorite biographical work. Now, this one's a little different because it's kind of an autobiography, kind of a Christian living, kind of, I don't even know how to classify it, but I'm going to put it in biography or autobiography. And that is The God of the Garden by Andrew Peterson. If you don't know who Andrew Peterson is, he is a very talented singer-songwriter. He's written a lot of books. He's written some fantasy books that are great called the Wingfeather Saga. But this book, The God of the Garden, really tells his story and his struggle in a lot of ways of dealing with things like depression, anxiety, dealing with struggle, trying to understand who God really is. It's just an incredible work. It's really well done. It's emotionally moving and relatable, with some solid biblical truth for both the head and the heart. So it's emotionally moving, but it's filled with solid biblical truth. It's not just trying to emotionally connect with you, but to show you there is solid truth behind what he's saying. Again, dealing with mental health is one part of this book that I really identified with and really enjoyed hearing his story as he talked about that. Also, just a hopeful theme of the gospel in this book about resurrection and purposeful suffering, longing, lots of themes, dealing with the sadness that comes around growing up. Just very good book. Check it out. Andrew Peterson, the God of the Garden. The second category, number 2, is favorite theological work, and that goes to The Wonderful Works of God by Herman Bavinck. This is sort of a systematic theology. It's dumbed down. He has these big, several volume sets called Reformed Dogmatics. This is 1 volume. It's very good. It's still, quite a bit of reading. I forgot how many pages total it is. It's up there. But it's Bavinck, and he's been dead a long time, by the way, but he deals with theological topics in this book, I think, with the intention of connecting with anyone and everyone, not merely academics or seminary students or whatever. Just very great intro to theological concepts for anyone and everyone who's a Christian. There's also, it's full of doxology as well, along with the theology. In other words, he really stirs you to worship this God that you're coming to know more about, not merely just fill your head with facts about him, but to worship and adore this God. So, number 2, that category, favorite theological works, is The Wonderful Works of God by Herman Bavinck. Check that one out. The third category is just sort of a general favorite non-fiction book. And this one's a little particular to me, but I know there are many parents out there who maybe could relate to this one. And that book is Parenting a Child with Autism by Richard Bass. I don't know if many of you know this. I don't know if I've talked about it on YouTube or not. Maybe I have. My son Gideon is autistic. He's 6 years old, going on 7. And it's just, if you don't know what that's like, there's just a lot of challenges in trying to understand how to be a good parent to a child with special needs, a child who's not neurotypical. And this book was incredibly helpful to me to see my son just more correctly, to understand who he is, or how his brain works, how things work, a lot better. So my son is verbal, so some autistic people are not verbal. My son is verbal, but he's not very conversational. He's really does echolalia a lot, repeats and things like that. But we're seeing, he's been going to speech therapy, and there's improvement there. It's been great. But this book just helped me to understand him better, helpful to understand and see the world through the autistic lens, how autistic people see the world, and just great practical advice for parents who have children with this particular special need. So that's number 3, favorite nonfiction, parenting a child with autism. Number 4, this category is favorite Christian living book. In this one, I put Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy by Mark Vroegop. I think that's how you say his name. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Mark Vroegop. Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy. This year has not been an easy year for me, just being honest. It's been a lot of struggle. There's been a lot of pain and suffering. There's been a lot, without going into too much detail. This book really helped me understand how to process that in a way that's glorifying to God. Now, cards on the table, I've actually read this book before this year. I've read it a while back, but I reached for it again this year because I wanted some fresh perspective on the particular things that I was dealing with. And man, I gotta say, it's a great book for understanding how to respond to grief, pain, and suffering in a biblical way. So if you've never checked it out, Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy, another thing, it just gives you hope for the future. It teaches you the language of lament, and goes through some lament psalms and the book of Lamentations, and just shows you biblically how we should respond to grief, sorrow, sadness, tragedy, those things when they happen. How do we cry out to God without being irreverent, but also telling him the truth about how we feel? So great book for that. Really encouraging to me. And then the last category, the fun one, this is going to be my favorite fiction work of 2023 that I read. Now, if I didn't say this already, it's not that these books were written in 2023. Many of them were written well before that. It's just what I read this year. But my favorite fiction work was a fantasy, big surprise. I'm a fantasy lover. But it was a fantasy book by Brandon Sanderson called Elantris. This is just, to me, a new up-and-coming, which I guess he's been around for a while now, but just one of the absolute best modern fantasy writers, because he really has done his own thing with it. I'm a huge Tolkien fan. I love Tolkien's works. I love Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion, the Unfinished Tales, all those. I've read all those. I love them. But those books sort of set the formula for every other fantasy book. But Sanderson really takes a new approach, a different approach. He has these cool things in his work about, magic systems, hard and soft magic. And by the way, magic, not real magic, just fantasy. It's just a story. It's just for fun. Calm down. Okay. But Elantris was the first book I've ever read from Sanderson, and I just really enjoyed it. It's a fresh take on the fantasy genre. There's not much at all in the way of offensive content. There's some like graphic things, maybe, violence and things like that, but there's not really, foul language or any sort of tropes that can hit with modern fantasy, like, sexual things or anything like that. It's really just a great story with compelling characters that you want to root for. To me, that's what makes a fantasy novel really good. Do I care about these characters? Is there a clear, defined line between good and evil? And who's the good guy? And do I care about the good guy? Do I care about the bad guy? Do I understand why he's bad? All those things Sanderson just really nails in the book Elantris. So check that out if you're into fantasy fiction. I could obviously put a lot more fiction works in here because I love reading fiction, but I just stuck with the one for the sake of this video. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed that list. As always, like I said, all these things are going to be linked down below. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't and you want to see more content like this. I really enjoyed doing this 5-category book review list. And I'll have some more book reviews coming up this year that I'm planning on putting out there. So thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video.
I fix my eyes on Christ. I fix my